All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I entitled this show "Welcome to My Nightmare," the Alice Cooper song, because 1984 Saints season was my nightmare. Our starting quarterback was Richard Todd, and the guy they had in the bullpen was Dave Wilson, and you had an aging Ken Stabler as like the other option. Um, the Saints came off of an 8-8 record, just missed the playoffs by a Mike Lansford field goal, which actually, in retrospect, was a kind of a good thing because the Rams got blasted by the Redskins,
Right.
40-3, or some outrageous score like that. Because the Redskins were the high. That was the Fun Bunch era. That
Yep.
was the Redskins were the highest scoring offense in the NFL that year until they ran into the Raiders in Tampa Stadium back then. But you know, Todd was terrible, and we gave a first round pick for him. He only started 9 games for us, and the games he started, it was just painful to watch. You put Dave Wilson in. Dave Wilson wasn't any better. Dave Wilson's that we've talked about this on the show before. He was like that
Hmm.
relief pitcher. You never wanted him to start a game, but like a Dennis Eckersley or a Goose Gossage, he was very reliable for the save. He could come in and do some stuff for you to help you win the game.
Hmm.
To come in, like I think the Bengals game in 1987, where he came in for an injured Bobby Abear. Um, and then you had the aging uh, Kenny Stabler, who may have only been 37 years old, but he had a body of a 65-year-old by that point.
Yeah.
Um, Hokey Gajon talks about how he walk in his locker room and you just hear this loud crack where he would readjust his knee. I mean, it's like God. And of course, Stabler retired midway after the Dallas game in 1984
Hmm.
because he was so bad in that game. So, it's. Are we at this point yet? Do you feel like this is a team that's quarterbackless?
Uh, no.
What a question, huh?
It is. No, I don't. But it is a valid question to ask, and it's certainly a valid topic to wonder about. Uh, I'm a Jameis Winston supporter. You know that, and yeah, I have been since the day they got him. I was aware, am certainly aware of the risks with Jameis Winston, and I thought he turned the corner last year as far as those turnovers go. And I'm still not convinced that he hasn't. But we know that you get the good Jameis, and we know that you get the bad Jameis. But the Jameis Winston that I saw on Sunday, uh, it's a guy that is clearly in a lot of pain and labor with that back. He cannot make the throw. Yeah, he looked like he was shot putting some of those throws.
Mhm.
And while I admire the toughness, yeah, of course I will because I'm a psycho that way. Uh, I admire the toughness when it reaches a point that you're hurting your team, not to mention potentially your health, your long term health, by being out there. It's really time for either someone else to tell Jameis to take a seat or for Jameis to recognize his shortcomings, his additional shortcomings. So, no, I'm not giving up on Jameis, but I really wonder. And this Sunday is going to tell. Has got to tell the tale. I really wonder if he is capable of running this offense with the health that he's in right now.
One of the things that really bothers me about Jameis right now is all the discipline, all the things that he said he learned from Drew and Sean
Hmm.
past years, all gone out the window now.
Yeah.
We have we in all 3 games. Well, let's just push the Atlanta game to the side. But in the past 2 games, we start out with a very good drive. He's throwing the short passes. He is making quick decisions. They're running the ball effectively and they're moving the ball effectively. There's a little rhythm to the offense.
Mhm.
Something goes wrong. Last week it was the chop block, which that was a horrible call.
Yeah.
But the point, something bad would happen. And, I started with saying it was like the 1984 Saints. These mistakes I'm seeing remind me of Jim Haslett's Saints. The non, this, for lack of a better term, the stupid mistakes,
Mhm.
the mental mistakes, lining up off sides, two false starts in a row, um, just dumb penalties.
Mhm.
Um, you know, you get 3rd and 2, and then you get a false start, and now it's 3rd and 7, and it feels like if it becomes 3rd and 6 or longer, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to convert that. And I'm in no way I'm not comparing this to Drew Brees, but I'm only comparing this offense to 2011's offense. We could be 3rd and 17, and we're probably going to pick that up
Mhm.
with an 18 or 20-yard play, a screen pass or something like that. Um, it's maddening how this team consistently makes mistakes to shoot themselves in the foot, and then now with Kamara fumbling the ball and they scoop it up for a touchdown, you gave that team a life, because
Mhm.
you go down that field, because that's the second possession after the punt because of the chop block, which was
Right.
a 15-yard penalty, I believe.
Yep.
Uh, once that happened and they had to punt, it's like they start spinning out of control. And when things go wrong, this whole team just seems to hang its head and go, here we go again.
Yeah.
So Jameis now feels like I got to make it all up in one play,
Yeah.
which is the opposite of what he was doing last year and what he did in Tampa for 5 years.
Mhm.
Um, so while I agree with you that the injuries are affecting him, I also think that he's gone right back into Tampa Jameis, where I'm going to make the big play. I have to get it all. I'm not patient anymore. I got to get it all in one play.
Mhm.
So he's throwing these bombs all day long to Olave. And the picture I put on the I guess the cover for this episode, um, it's a classic example. Everyone saw this. The offensive line is blocking well. Jameis has Alvin Kamara less than 7 yards from him.
Mhm.
He's looking at Landry, staring Landry down in the corner. He's inaccurate on the throw, but if you throw to Kamara, it's 3rd and 3. Kamara's not only getting the first down, he's got a really good chance of scoring. Yeah, there's one Carolina defender. How many times have we seen Kamara beat one guy to get in the end zone? It's frustrating because take what the defense gives you, throw that little pass, let your playmaker get it, and don't worry about the touchdown pass to Landry. That's another play for another time.
Mhm.
Take what the defense gives you, and it's frustrating that you're seeing this again and again. Matt Millen was calling this game, and Matt Millen said, "Oh, he missed a wide open on."
Yeah.
Adam Trotman. Nobody picked him up. He's running down the sidelines wide open. There's Olave, who he throws to all the time for some,
Mhm.
but Olave is waving his arms wide open, and he forces it to Jarvis Landry. And you see this over and over and over again. So it's to me that's what's beyond the injury.
It is. Yeah.
So
Yeah. It is, and you're absolutely right. And those were the shortcomings. That even the Jameis supporters had to admit that it was always in the back of our minds. Uh, and you can't blame that on the injury. You can, in part, blame it on the coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a huge problem with not only Dennis Allen but the entire coaching staff this year. When a team consistently plays undisciplined, sloppy, out
Mm-hmm.
of control is a word. Yeah, is a phrase that you used a minute ago. And the Saints check all three boxes.
Yeah.
Uh, it it does remind you uh, of those Jim Haslett teams. And for younger fans, look up the talent that were on those Saints teams, offense and defense. And you sit there and it's still a bewilderment to me. And I'm friends with a handful of guys on that team. So are you.
Yeah.
Um, to this day, it still befuddles me how this team couldn't be a consistent 11-5, 12-4, every single year, because they had that much talent. But they lost games the same way this team is losing games. Uh, they'll cut through a defense like butter, like a hot knife through butter on offense, and then get a penalty, questionable or not.
Mhm.
It's still a penalty, or a bad pass to go 2nd and 10 or 3rd and 12 or something like that, or turn a 3rd and 2 into a 3rd and 10, uh, and then just short circuit. They had a defense just like this one that will dominate a team for the entire game in almost every aspect, but one, maybe a missing pass rush, maybe a pathetic tackling effort on two key plays of the game, that result in big gains or a long touchdown. That's how those Hazlitt teams lost games, literally every single week.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's how this Saints team is losing games. And you're right. I do see the physical body language on the sideline. The announcers not only pointed to it in the Carolina game, you saw it in the Tampa Bay game too. You saw it in the Atlanta game, the season opener.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also befuddling because this is a team outside of Olave, and you brought in May, you brought in Matthew, a Super Bowl champion, Tyrann Mathieu, and Landry. Outside of those names, the rest of the configuration of the New Orleans Saints remain the same. Of the four-time division champion, of the perennial Super Bowl contender. And these are the guys that are getting down on the sidelines, hanging their heads, chipping at each other, or in Alvin Kamara's case, and I'm just going to say it out loud, uh, giving half-ass effort, as a pass receiver out of the backfield. Um, Plays like that, players not making plays that we're accustomed to seeing. This season is, and no, I saw someone mention in the comments that it's not time to panic. No, it's not, but it's edging towards desperation time. This team's got to turn it around quickly, and it starts from the sidelines and from the leadership in that locker room and in those huddles.
It's funny you mentioned Dennis Allen because Sean Payton learned a lot from um, uh, Bill Parcells,
Yes.
where there was constant tension on the team and in the locker room between Peyton and the players, as
Mm-hmm.
far as you didn't want to get Sean Payton's bad side because Sean Payton was going to rip you up.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about, we talked about the offsides penalties and the mental mistakes, or even the turnovers. We've all seen it when Peyton was on the sideline and something like that would happen, the death stare that player would get. And if Peyton felt like it, he's following that guy
Yeah.
down the sideline. I saw last year Marquez Callaway run all the way to the far end of the bench and try and sneak in that way, and
Uh-huh.
Peyton found him and was ready to chew his ass out. You don't see that with Allen.
Nope.
That's not Allen's personality. Allen's personality, in fact, was he's like a maniac during the week, but at the game he's calm. Whereas Peyton was calm during the week, but on game day he's ready to light people up. He's
Mm-hmm.
waiting to light people up, and he learned that from Parcells. That's
Yeah.
how Parcells was. You can go to YouTube and look up the videos. Parcells chewing Phil Simms out, and Al Michaels joking about how, and they're winning, you know, but he's still chewing Phil Simms out. And he tells Phil Simms, get back in the huddle. I'll call the damn play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that kind of stuff. We've seen the sound bites. And I've told the story about, you know, Pat Swilling and Lawrence Taylor.
Lawrence Taylor, yep.
You know, Lawrence Taylor's his best defender. He knows that, but he had to motivate him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't handle Panky. Swilling can handle Panky. You can't, evidently, and stresses that word. So you go up to New Orleans and send Swilling down here so we can win this game.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have to swap jerseys. Oh, you know, what a way to hit a player's ego, especially a guy like Lawrence Taylor. And I'm saying this because that's the kind of you can't imitate a guy, but that's the kind of fire that I think this team responds to. And
Yeah,
Al may be too passive for this roster for this.
he might be, and yeah, it's okay to be
Mm-hmm.
a coach like that. And like you said, you don't want to be someone that you're not, because a player smells that out real quick,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not going to have any respect for you. So
No.
if that's the way Dennis Allen is, that's fine. But even and you use the word passive, and that's a pretty good word. I'd use the word subdued. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if I'm being kind, and right now it's really tough for me to be kind about Dennis Allen. Uh, but yeah, if you're going to be subdued, that's okay. But you need to find other ways to motivate a player, to motivate a unit, to uh, to make them feel some sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And as I said in the article, and I did point the finger towards not only Dennis Allen but Pete Carmichael too. Um, Having said all that, it still starts with the players on the field. The players on the field are the ones that have to execute. The players on the field are the ones that are making the stupid mistakes over and over and over again. And this is a veteran team, a
Yeah.
veteran team that we thought had a strong spine in the way of Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, even Marshawn Lattimore, Mike Thomas, guys like that. And I'm not saying that those guys individually are having bad seasons, but uh, the leadership, the culture in the huddles was supposed to be able to carry this team, while the new faces and the new system got acclimated, and it's just not happening right now.
No, and you know, it's funny that you mentioned those guys because I don't see those guys stepping up on the sidelines and pulling people together. In fact, Demario Davis is not having a good season at all.
No, not
Uh,
really.
I saw him miss a couple tackles that a few years ago, or even last year, he was making effortlessly. You know, he was just a tackling machine all over the field. And I don't think it's a question of him losing a step. I think it's just a question of effort and motivation, which is weird, you know, to say. But
What I
I
just
don't,
suggested about Kamara is the same
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, you don't see the effort there. You don't see them making the extra step. And this was a comparison when I started to write my good, bad, and ugly. I started out with this, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to rip into Dennis Allen yet. I'm not. I was trying not to, but it's eerily paralleling Vince Lombardi's, and you know, here I am really old now, but Vince Lombardi's year as a general manager of the Packers, 1968. He goes to the Redskins in 1969. And in 1968, Lombardi, after the 67 season and the 67 Super Bowl, which is Super Bowl two,
Mhm.
Lombardi steps down as the head coach of the Packers. And he appoints, or he didn't appoint, but announced the new head coach was Phil Bingston, his defensive coordinator when he was in Green Bay. And Phil Bingston was not Lombardi.
Mhm.
And Lombardi is sitting out there watching this, and he's depressed because number one, he can't say anything because then he's undercutting his own head coach's authority. but he can see everything that's going wrong. Um, you know, and it was because Lombardi had this ability to make his players play above their ability. He
Hmm.
could reach in there and get them to play at a level they didn't think they could play. And I think Peyton had a similar reaction with this team, got this team to play better than they really were because he was such a control freak. He controlled everything.
He
He
did.
controlled the music they listened to during practice. He would chew a guy out for having 27 pens in the thing when he asked for 26. Don't you dare give him spearmint or some other gum, give him juicy fruit on the sideline during game day. You know, that kind of stuff. He was everything was,
Hmm.
and you've got a guy now in Dennis Allen who he's organized. He knows what he wants. He knows what he wants to do, and he thinks he's got a room for professionals who are used to Peyton being the guy on top of them 24/7. And now you've got a guy who is not built that way. And he can't be like that because, like you said, players will sniff that out. That you're not Sean Payton.
Yep.
But his ability, Sean Payton enjoyed managing crises. You know, I think that was his favorite thing
It
when
was.
would go sour because now he could bust ass on people. Whereas when they won a game 62-7, like when they beat the Colts, you know, how do you motivate that team now? You just blew out the Colts, and of course the following week they lost.
Hmm.
Yeah, because they felt like they were better than any. They just show up and teams roll over, and you know, that was Peyton in his mind, I know, was enjoying. That's good. I'm glad you got your ass kicked on this thing because, man, practice is going to be a mother. I'm
Yep.
going to tear everyone a new one when we break down this film. Uh, Don Shula was that way. Don
Yep.
Shula, the 72 Dolphins, perfect season. And the players would talk about they'd watch the film and he's going through the corrections. And the players would come out after the film room and go, "Did we win that game? I thought we won that game."
Hmm.
You know, and it's that kind of stuff. And you're not. I don't know if um if Allen has that ability, and I think that's that's what we have to see this week against the Vikings in Minnesota in London, not Minnesota, in London, because now you've taken the players away from their family. You've got a mini training camp kind of thing here. How are you going to win this team back? How are you going to prepare them to win? How are you going to instill that confidence in them? I mean, that's to me that's the big challenge, the big question mark this week.
Yeah, it is. And we're going to find out a lot about the New Orleans Saints this week because of all those circumstances working against them. Being overseas, being against a team that ended your Super Bowl hopes in 2 of those 4 years. And a lot of those players are still in that locker room. Um, yeah. And, like I said, being overseas, you've lost two straight to divisional opponents. Yeah. And these guys know the score. They know that a divisional loss is much more damaging than a loss, out of conference for sure, but even inside your own conference, it's damaging in twofold. They know they haven't played well. I mean, these guys aren't stupid either. They're talking about, and you hear little sniping comments coming from them. Even a guy like Cam Jordan who said immediately after the game, "I'll let you guys question Jameis. I know what I need to work on." Is that, some people took that as a slight towards the offense. I don't. It's just Cam being Cam. But that also shows some potential small waves brewing, about some discontent between the offense and the defense. And I just saw someone mention in the comments, about it's hard for the defense to stay motivated. Yeah and no. I mean, Alan and I have talked to people, to players from that Dome Patrol era, on both sides of the football, and they've each admitted some frustrations. Um, but the defense has to realize that they aren't exactly world beaters right now either. They're playing better. They're trending upward. If it weren't for an offensive comeback in the fourth quarter against Atlanta, this team would be 0-3. The defense didn't do anything that game. They fell apart down the stretch against Tampa Bay. And again, the statistics bear out well that they played well against Carolina, and no doubt trending upward. But you still gave up a back-breaking touchdown to Laviska freaking Chenault because you couldn't/wouldn't tackle him. So this defense shouldn't be riding a high horse either.
No, I mean, and somebody mentioned it earlier. We not only are not getting to the quarterback, but we're not getting turnovers.
No,
This game, I thought we were going to get turnovers.
me
I
too.
thought we were going to pick off Mayfield a couple times in this game, and we didn't. Um, that was very disappointing. The pass rush just simply is not there. And Brady's getting rid of the ball in less than 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the first game, Mariota was running all over him, running all over the place. And McCaffrey, even though he got 100 yards, it took him like 27 or 28 carries to get to it.
It did.
So it wasn't like he was busting these big runs on you, like Cordell Patterson did in week 1. But the very fact they were able to run the football or stick with the run was concerning.
Exactly.
Because I think Mayfield had he completed less than 50% of his passes. He had 22 yards passing in the first half.
Yeah.
He just it was frustrating that he just could not shut down that Carolina offense to the point where their defense got tired. It's I don't know how to put it other than the defense is playing well enough to win, but they're not playing well.
And I'd say that's definitely accurate. And like I said a minute ago, between the two units, the defense is definitely trending upward. While offense and special teams both are noticeably trending downward on so many levels. But the defense is still making fundamental errors, and people keep talking about the pass rush, and I get it. But like Alan just said, and like I said on Jordy Hultberg earlier today, even though McCaffrey's 108 yards were hard earned, the Panthers still managed 145 yards on the ground, and were productive enough that they didn't feel like they had to abandon the running game at any point in time.
Yeah.
She's good.
Yeah, that you're right. That was what was frustrating. A lot of it was because the offense could not put any points on the board.
Yeah.
And we haven't even gone into the special teams yet, but the special teams are, this was a team loss Sunday because the special teams were terrible in the game too. None of Lutz's kickoffs were for touchbacks. They were all returned. Nope. The punting, Hecker out-punted Gillikin by a long shot. He put four of them inside the 20, a couple of them inside the 5.
Yep.
Whereas Gillikin got touchbacks, giving the Panthers, instead of making them go from their 4, 3, or 1 yard line where you could really turn the pass rush loose, because Chenault, he caught some passes, but like DJ Moore was non-factor. Robbie Anderson, I don't think he was even out there.
And not to interrupt you, but Anderson and Moore had a collective 2 receptions for 16 yards, and they saw a combined 11 targets.
Yeah,
So Lattimore and Roby played a hell of a game.
right, exactly. I mean, if May is playing instead of PJ Williams, Chenault probably doesn't score that touchdown. Um, but my point is though that Carolina still felt like we could run the football because their offense isn't doing anything. And we'll
Mm-hmm.
play a field position game, and our punter will punt them into the other end zone, and they're going to have to go 90 yards against our defense, and they
Yeah.
can't do it. So we can run the football still. We don't have to score, and we've got enough points. That one turnover was enough. And, Winston saving these late game heroics to the fourth quarter when other teams stop blitzing him, it gets frustrating. It really does.
Let me ask you this. If you're Dennis Allen, uh, and John Butler, it's a good question, and that's kind of where I'm going with this. You mentioned what the Carolina Panthers game strategy obviously was on Sunday, which was a lot of what Sean Payton and the Saints had to do because of all the injuries last year. Right?
Mhm.
Injuries forced them into that strategy. Now you have Michael Thomas, you have Olave, you have Landry, you have you had a healthy Winston. Uh, Despite all that, though, with the defense that you believe that you have, and that we've seen before, would you force Jameis? Because a lot of us, myself included, were yelling and screaming about Sean Payton. Sean Payton, you got to take the shackles off Jameis Winston and let him throw last
Mhm.
year. Because of the issues with the offense, the offensive line, would you go back to that strategy, at least for the next few weeks now? Run the ball, even if you do go 3 and out, let Gillikin pin the other team deep and let your defense win it. Would you do that at this point in time if you're Dennis Allen?
One of the things I got a problem with Jameis in the stories I'm hearing about Jameis is that Jameis is saying he doesn't have good chemistry with Michael Thomas. He's got better chemistry with Chris Olave.
Right.
That bothers me because to me, Michael Thomas is your best receiver out there.
Mm-hmm.
You should be targeting him as much as you target Olave.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to Olave because you love that deep ball. You love
Yeah.
to throw down the seam and and get the big play. And the same with Alvin Kamara. You're not getting Alvin Kamara involved in this game the way you should. And my son pointed this out just now. He says he thinks that Pete Carmichael's designing plays for Kamara and MT, but Jameis is going somewhere else with the ball. I don't
Matt, if that's true, then again, you got to circle back to the coaches
Yeah.
and get on Pete Carmichael's ass for not getting on Jameis Winston's ass or just sitting him altogether if he's just going to ignore the play call.
And I think that could have been what some of the argument was on the sideline against Carolina was that you're passing those guys up to take this shot because Lave's beating these people. I'm not saying he's not,
Right.
but you're taking that shot instead of taking the other play. So now this is a roundabout way of answering your question. You almost need to put those shackles on him, or as we started the show with, you're probably sitting down and say, you know what, we're going to sit you down for health reasons, but we're going to sit you down right now because you're out of control and you're not focused and you're hurting the team with your play. And I'm not saying Andy Dalton is, and this is where I was going with Dennis Allen. If Dennis Allen was to take control of this team and put his personality imprint on this team, I think this is what these players are looking for. I think they're looking for the coach to come in and kick ass and take names. You're not Sean Payton, but it's time for you to step up and start dictating these guys. This is how I'm running this team. you guys, the inmates are not running this asylum. I'm
Yeah.
running this asylum. And I'm going to sit you down because every Monday when we go over the game film, I'm circling the open guys and where you're going with the football. And I'm sorry, this was Hazlitt's weakness because Hazlitt was terrified to criticize Brooks because you criticize Aaron Brooks and it's like, he just caves like a house of cards. And that was why he was terrified to play Brooks in 2000. Delhomme in 2002 when they needed that one win to get back to the playoffs because he
Yeah.
didn't want to have a quarterback controversy. He knew that while Brooks is more physically talented than Delhomme was a gamer. Delhomme probably wins that game. Maybe he wins a playoff game. I don't know. It depends on who they played and how that game unfolded. But he was going to show a Bobby Hebert like kind of fire that the team would respond to over the more talented Brooks, who they just paid a ton of money to,
Right.
for some reason. But yeah, they paid him a ton of money to make him the official starter. So I don't know if he's afraid of a divided locker room because and I don't think Dalton is this guy. That's why I started this
No.
show comparing him to. He's
No.
actually closer to Richard Todd than I was saying with Jameis. Jameis is like Richard Todd too, but he's got a lot of Dave Wilson in him. This is Dalton is at the end of his career.
He
Dalton
is.
not a very good passer, but I think Dalton is the guy who's going to be like. I mean, you saw it with Taysom Hill, you saw it with Trevor Siemian, you saw it with even Ian Book. When they're in trouble, who are they going to throw the ball to? Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, all day long. You know who the guys you're going to go to win a football game
Mm-hmm.
because you're not good enough to win it on your own.
Yep.
So I don't know if he's afraid of that happening. That now suddenly you're feeding Thomas, you're feeding Kamara, Dalton is feeding these guys, and the offense is now moving. And I'm not even remotely suggesting this team is suddenly racking up points and winning, but
No.
they're competitive. They're scoring in the first half, and then you can kind of fix a lot of the other problems. Yes, 2 passes to Kamara is not enough. That's a huge problem.
No. But again, the Alvin Kamara I see right now, he looks like an unmotivated player, and I know he's dealing with the rib injury. And that anybody who's had a rib injury, and I have, that does slow you because literally everything you do, right down to breathing, hurts. But I saw at times an unmotivated Alvin Kamara, and this is just my eyes. I saw at times an unmotivated Alvin Kamara in 2021, or a visibly frustrated Kamara, and it would come out more as a pass receiver than when he's running the ball. And he had one clear, blatant drop on Sunday. There were 2 more balls that I think a little bit extra effort could have brought in the reception. Plays that we've seen Alvin Kamara make in the past. So, and I'm not excusing that. I'm not saying that that's why they're not targeting him. I'm not saying that that's why they're not targeting him. I am wondering out loud if one thing isn't feeding another. Kamara is visibly frustrated because he doesn't feel like he's getting the ball enough. Then the Saints don't give him the ball enough because he's not giving extra effort on his routes or on his effort making the catches. It's probably both. But yeah, it's clearly something very wrong with Alvin Kamara, and in turn, it's affecting. And it's just one more thing, one more very, very wrong thing about the Saints offense. Because like you said, why do you guys think Teddy Bridgewater had so much success as quarterback of the New Orleans Saints?
I could have brought up Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, it wasn't. And that would have been the perfect comparison. It wasn't because Teddy Bridgewater is any good, because he's really not. He's average. On his best day, he's average. He won and look at the numbers. He won games while Drew was out because he literally fed Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara on every single play. Those two guys were responsible for literally 73. I did an article at the time, so I don't remember the exact number, but the number 73% sticks in my head for some reason. That's an ungodly total, no matter how talented you are. But Teddy Bridgewater subscribed to Football 101. You put the football in your best players' hands.
Um, okay, so I'm going to ask you about this then, because I have my opinions about this, but I want to hear yours first. The offensive line. People are really, the diehard Jameis supporters are pointing to the offensive line saying, well, look, the man's injured and he has no time because that offensive line is just letting guys run clean to him on these blitzes. They're struggling to open holes for the running game on a consistent basis. None of them, I mean, the usual suspects, Ruiz, Pete, Hurst, they're all not.
Ramczyk too. He is playing like garbage right now.
Yeah. Are you Do you subscribe to that the offensive line is a lot of the problems with this offense, or do you subscribe it to it's just another symptom of an overall problem?
It's another symptom of an overall problem, and I thought the offensive line, pass protection in particular, actually played better on Sunday. They still couldn't open holes up in the run game, but the offensive line started the season out so poorly that opponents just decided we're going to blitz the bejesus out of Jameis Winston, which has always been the book on him anyway.
Yes.
Because they can't block it, especially inside. And you see, and Ramczyk is playing poorly, but he's still Ryan Ramczyk. Most of those pressures are coming right up the middle, right over Pete, right over Ruiz, who are 300-pound human turnstiles. But it's also Jameis's job to pick up that blitz, to make the calls. It's Eric McCoy's job to make those calls up front. So so it's both of those as well. It's Pete Carmichael's job to adjust his game plan to what opposing defenses are doing to him, and it's up to certain receivers. And I know Michael Thomas is doing it because I've seen him do it. It's up to the receivers, Kamara, to recognize the blitz and change their routes. Because all this is built into the game plan. This is your hot route on this play if the opponent runs this coverage or they blitz. Everybody who follows football in detail knows this. So it's an overall symptom. But more often than not, especially the first 2 weeks, this offensive line was even having trouble blocking 3 and 4 rushers. So it does start up front. But it's everybody is responsible for it, and it's Jameis's fault too. I already mentioned the lack of blitz pickup on his blitz recognition on his part. Even if he misses that in his pre-snap read, he's got to get rid of the ball when it's 3rd and 2, and you're sitting at the opposing 30-yard line where you're still in field goal range. You don't take a damn 10-yard sack to put yourself out of field goal range. Like they did on after Ingram's a questionably convenient chop block, put him in a hole. What did Jameis do right? I think I'm correct on this. Jameis took a sack right after that. That killed the field goal.
Yeah,
I might be thinking of another drive that this happened because it's happened so often. 2 or 3 times. And we saw it last year too. 2 or 3 times per game, Jameis Winston is getting sacked to take them out of field goal range. Whether it's the offensive line's fault, probably check that box. Whether it's the coordinator's fault, check that box. Whether it's Jameis Winston's fault for not, it's something as simple as, again, football 101. Get rid of the football and make it, live to fight another day. So as a long answer to your short question, the offensive line has been putrid, but it's just one other symptom of the offensive difficulties.
That was my opinion, because I said yes, I think the offensive line has struggled at times and struggled at key times, but I don't think it's as bad as what we're seeing out there. And what I see a lot is overload blitzes and up the middle blitzes. And my God, that, like you said, that's football 101. That's one of the first things you learn. I identify how many times, and again, we're comparing the breeze, but I'm only doing this because I know people saw this. How many times are we watching a Saints game and they're at home and you can hear everything Drew is
Mm-hmm.
saying? Kill, 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 kill. Mike 51, Mike 51. Um, he points out he dropped. This is what he's trying to do it near the end of his career. Dropped to a knee and did this born to hand jive motion with to the and that's the best way I could put it
It's
to
a
the
good one.
receivers because that was a symbol to go to a hot route
Mm-hmm.
because I'm identifying this coverage. I see what's going on. And then you
Mm-hmm.
start clicking the fingers because, he's so excited. Oh, Marcus Peters is one on one with Michael Thomas since the
Mm-hmm.
2018 game against the Rams. And I got this. He's got no over the top safety help. This is an easy touchdown. He spotted all that. He knows the defense, and we've seen this too. And I recommend people, go find that go find the 2011 Monday night game against the Giants because um, they show that sequence where it's Sean, it's Pete Carmichael, it's Drew sitting in the Saturday night meeting before the game. Well, in this case, was a Sunday night meeting before the game, going through the game plan, and here's Peyton and Carmichael with their red pens marking off the plays that Drew's reading off. I like this play. I like that play.
Mm-hmm.
I think this play at a certain time, this is good. We'll call this one when we get in the situation. I think, and he's doing all this, we run opposite because if we ran this, they'll do this. I don't know if that's going on. And that showed you how prepared he was to face this game and
Mm-hmm.
face his opponent. He knew what their defense is going to do before they did it.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that's what I expect out of Jameis. But Jameis is like the polar opposite. Jameis is coming out there like a pickup game of football, it seems. And he's playing backyard ball where he's telling, okay, you cut by Mrs. Johnson's mailbox, you do a button hook in front of the Pontiac, and you go deep. And that's where I'm going to go deep, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it just feels like that. It feels like they're not even prepared out there. That the defense is a total mystery to them. Like, oh my God, they're blitzing me. They're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to do one Mississippi, two Mississippi, three Mississippi. Like when you play touch football
Yeah.
in the pavement. You do three Mississippi before you go after the quarterback.
Yep.
It's mind boggling because I just want to hear Jameis identify the mic and pick up the blitz and change the defense, change the offensive protection, move the running back over here. If they're coming at me from my left side and the running back's on the right side, why is he on the right side?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I need you over here. Pick up six. He's coming on the edge. And I'll roll out opposite where the rush is coming. Yeah, it shortens the field by a third, but it still gets me away from the pressure, and I
Yep.
have a better chance to make a quick little out route, slant, hook, back shoulder throw, something. And you don't see that. They're just, oh, look, here comes a blitz. Oh, well, I'll see if I can get rid of this ball. Maybe if I take a 12-step drop instead of an 7-step drop, I might buy myself extra time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that's what's frustrating. And you're right. Overload blitzes can be beat with a toss in the opposite direction. Anything to the opposite direction.
Yep.
A screen pass into that blitz. When's the last time we ran a Pierre Thomas play? I mean, and I call it that because it's a screen pass. I
Yeah.
saw him attempt one screen pass the whole game, and that was the one that the ball got tipped and it fell right in front of Alvin Kamara, and he probably could have scooped it out of the ground.
That's one of the
But
plays I'm talking about.
yeah, it was tipped and it fell in front of him.
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, I
Minnesota,
mean,
Minnesota Vikings coming up this week.
hmm
Minnesota gets after the passer.
yeah,
They are big along the defensive front. Their linebackers are big, physical, and smart, but not particularly athletic.
mm-mm.
If you don't use Alvin Kamara as a receiver in this one, and run a lot of short, quick passes to test those linebackers from sideline to sideline, Pete Carmichael needs fired immediately. It won't happen, and I know that's hyperbole, but that's where I'm at. I've looked at the Vikings, and my God, I hate the Vikings. Uh, I hate them every bit as much as the 49ers, Falcons, Rams, the Tampa Brady near fans. And I say that before Tom Brady, I didn't pay any attention to the Buccaneers.
No,
Uh,
who did?
right, right. Not even Tampa Bay.
Right.
Um,
No, you could shoot deer in those stands. There's nobody
right.
there. I mean,
But yeah,
they're
I
like
hate
sitting out.
Minnesota. I hate Minnesota every bit as much as those guys. But I respect their offense, Minnesota's offense, especially at the skill. I don't respect the quarterback at all, but the skill positions I fear. But defensively, we've seen the Vikings were the first team to really solve the Saints' offensive line in terms of pass rush
Hmm
in that 2020 2019 wild card game. They moved to Neil Hunter and their best pass rushers inside and tested Pete and those guards, and they won.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, like I said, yeah, the Vikings are a big physical front all the way across, and their linebackers are the same. You beat them that way with a physical receiver in Michael Thomas and testing the linebackers' athleticism from sideline to sideline. Quick passes to Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara out of the backfield. Is that how you would attack the Minnesota defense if you were Pete Carmichael?
Absolutely. Screens, screen passes, flare. I shouldn't say flare, wheel route passes, because flare passes they'll probably jump on, but
Yeah.
wheel route passes. This is going to be a very tough game if that defense does not catch a break. If that defense is out there a lot, Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson are eventually going to break them
Hmm.
because um, you've got to make the Vikings and put all the pressure on Kirk Cousins to play catch up. And this is where I'm really concerned because, I don't think, I mean, we haven't seen any evidence. I mean, you only have one decent football quarter of football in 3 games. Um, you just don't see the evidence that the Saints are going to be able to make Kamara, I make the Vikings work for their points.
Hmm.
I think the Vikings will be able to move the ball pretty easily because the defense is going to get exhausted.
Yeah.
Um, if this team gets down 13 points again, they're definitely not coming back. Because I felt 13 points is insurmountable against Carolina, and it's like saying 13 points is insurmountable against the Jets. I mean, it's just
Right.
mind-boggling. Um, I think, yeah, I do think Lattimore can lock up Jefferson. I do think Adebo can handle, Adam Thielen. The problem is, can they do it for 4 quarters
Right.
when the offense has only scored 3 points or 10 points?
Yeah, and
And
that's
yeah,
how Kirk Cousins has had success against the Saints before. He
mhm,
just he just makes two or three big throws.
yeah,
But that's all they need. As long as Cousins doesn't throw the ball to the other team. And the Saints have the personnel to rattle him and get him to do that. But we've not seen that yet this year.
yeah,
I like the way the Saints defense matches up with Minnesota on paper. You're right. But this is a game where the Saints defense needs a little bit of support from their offense, even if it's just ball control and a handful of field goals. They need some kind of support because
yeah.
you know that Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, the Saints killer, and
Mhm.
Dalvin Cook are just too damn good to contain for an entire football game.
Absolutely. Well, one of the interesting things was the Saints did what they did last time they played in London. They took off Sunday after the game,
Mm-hmm.
straight to London, and they're spending the whole week in there. The Vikings don't leave until Friday
Right.
to go to London. So Saturday is their body clock adjustment
Mm-hmm.
for a game that their body clock will still tell them you're playing way early in the morning.
Yeah.
Um, and the reasoning was the Vikings want to make this a regular game week, even though you're going to London. Um, it's an interesting approach, and I'm not saying these guys are going to show up tired or anything like that, but I do think there'll be some remnants of a jet lag. And watch this. Now that I say this, they're going to go right down the field and score in the first possession and
I
look like
know.
a machine. But I just feel like I don't like that approach at all. I
Me either.
prefer the Saints approach. Isolate your team, get them out of the states, get them over to London, get them used to everything. Uh, yes, it's a business trip, and for some players, it may feel like a Super Bowl week because you kind of got some free time.
Mm-hmm.
They're professionals. I just like the idea of being there for a week and getting your body clock adjusted. I'm more concerned when they come back home and have to play Seattle
Yeah.
uh, after this. How are
Yeah.
they going to be? Because they're going to fly back Sunday night. And so, Monday going to now be their off day and going to start on Tuesday? That could be the case.
Yeah, and yeah, you have to. I think, and I didn't have time to do the exact research, but I feel pretty confident that it's somewhere in the 90th percentile, of teams that had to play London games had to bye the following week.
Mhm.
But leave it to British royalty conspirator Roger Goodell. I've been working this. I've been working on this all day. British royal conspirator Roger Goodell to throw this monkey wrench of a schedule at the New Orleans Saints. Uh, and it's just one more piece of adversity that the Saints have to deal with. So again, to a team that's reeling right now, let's call it for what it is. They are reeling. Uh, we're going to find out a lot about the character of this team for not only how they play against Minnesota, but the immediate aftermath. Because you have Seattle and the Cincinnati Bengals right after that. The Minnesota is a very winnable game. I know the history between these two.
Mhm.
These two franchises has not been pretty for the New Orleans side. But we already talked about how we both agree that the Saints defense on paper matches up with the Minnesota offense well. I think, and a very inexperienced outside of Harrison Smith, the safety who's been banged up. The Vikings have a very inexperienced secondary. So if you can move them around, and I don't mean by an inexperienced secondary that's prime for Jameis Winston deep shots.
No.
I mean, you can move that coverage around. We already mentioned how we would use Kamara, how we would use Michael Thomas. People. I'm surprised more people aren't mentioning this, but the last time the Saints and Vikings were on the same field was that Christmas Day drubbing.
Mhm. I was saying
Where Kamara ran for 155 yards and 6 touchdowns, which broke like tied like an 80-year-old NFL record.
yeah, tied with um, number 40 from the Bears, Gale
Mm-hmm.
Sayers against the 49ers in the mud. Yeah.
Um,
And John, I
uh,
was not at that game. I was not alive at that game. That was about
and
2
a
years
lot of
before I
people
was
will say,
born.
the Saints were able to run the ball against a big physical Vikings defense. Them, big difference. You had number 9 behind center, and Drew
Hmm.
Brees threw for over 300 yards that day. And this is a Drew Brees that couldn't go down the field anymore. So we're not talking to Jameis Winston deep shots. We're talking a passing attack that spread the Vikings out from sideline to sideline,
Yep.
leaving one-on-one blocking on the interior. And that's where Kamara was getting his yardage because of those one-on-one. Yeah, he had the cutback lanes. He had room to see what the defense was giving him and to adjust accordingly. So again, the key to this Vikings defense is testing their athleticism sideline to sideline.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought when I was on the Carolina podcast, the Panthers podcast last week, I expected Michael Thomas to get the bulk of the touches. I really did. I thought he
Same.
was going to be the guy who was going to light up the. Because they asked me, he says, "Was Michael Thomas an elite receiver?" And I said, "Yes." And they kind
Absolutely.
of chuckled, but I said, "Listen, I'm going to tell you right now. No, he's not the fastest, but my God, you put the ball anywhere around him, he's going to catch it. He has incredible body control, keeping his feet in bounds. Very rarely do you see Michael Thomas step out of bounds on a catch. Um, so in that, I said I compared him to Chris Carter. I say he's a Chris Carter kind of receiver. And they joked is all he does is catch touchdowns. I'm like, yeah, but Thomas doesn't catch the touchdowns, but he is like an elite possession receiver. In fact, he just
Mm-hmm.
passed Eric Martin for
Yep.
second all time. I'm sorry, third all time
Third.
on the Saints receiving list. Now he's about seven behind Joe Horn, 7 or 8 behind Joe Horn. Um, but yeah, he is quickly catching up to Marcus Colston. So when you're that kind of player, I think in those situations, a guy like Thomas should benefit from a beat up secondary. Harrison Smith, they said, dealing with an injury. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the kind of guy that Winston needs to lean on instead of taking the deep shots to Olave.
Yep.
Olave has his purpose, but you really need to be targeting Michael Thomas because you need to move those chains. Um, and I just feel like he's just not doing it for whatever reason. And I don't know why. I think he targets Jarvis Landry far more.
There's no doubt, and I like Olave. I really do.
Hmm.
And they used Olave a lot more effectively against Carolina than they did Tampa Bay. Because against Tampa Bay, as you know, and you alluded to at the time, against Tampa Bay, they were only running them deep.
Yeah.
Well, Olave showed at Ohio State that he's a lot more than just a deep ball threat.
Hmm.
Uh, he's a really good route runner, and that's what when I scouted him, that's what jumped out to me was how good. I mean, anybody with speed can run deep, right? Ted
Yeah.
Ginn could run deep.
Hmm.
Olave showed good route running ability, and they were starting to use that. But the thing about Jameis, Steve Weiss criticizes Jameis in the way that Jameis is only effective when a coach can get inside his head and keep him from playing hero ball,
Yeah.
because that's what Jameis Winston wants to do.
Yep.
But the thing is, and I respect the hero ball aspect, I do. But if you use Michael Thomas the way Michael Thomas is most effective, then that's going to open up more shots for you to take down the field.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Michael Thomas should be a route guy number one. I mean, they call him slant boy. He is your guy. You should be running those quick slants to beat the blitz.
Mm-hmm.
If they're blitzing you, uh, you're in a shotgun. Call that quick slant and let Michael Thomas use his body to shield out the defender and get 5 or 6 yards.
Yep.
Get it to makeable 2nd and 4, third and 2. And then your playbook opens up so much more. But it's just, I don't know how to describe it other than it's like he's a kid who plays Madden and he only knows all go and these in Texas and some of those routes they run and he looks for the receiver who's going deep
Yeah.
on every play and ignores the underneath stuff because that's what makes the highlight reels. That's what the people go ooh and ah over, and that's like you said, it's hero ball. He loves that high he gets after he gets that big touchdown, and that just it's like, man, that's great for backyard football. It's great for Madden, but that's not a winning strategy. You know, This is not the 1960s and Al Davis and the Raiders.
No,
Go with Daryl LaMonica going to Warren Wells. It's just not. That's not the kind of offense that the Saints even built like. The
no.
Saints still built for that Drew Brees dead arm short passing game.
Yep.
Um, not the greatest show on turf, but they're built for that short passing game where I get the ball to Kamara in space. I get the ball to Thomas with a 2 and 3 step drop. I'm getting the ball, to whomever. I'm running screen passes. That's what I'm doing. And that offense.
That's why they signed Jarvis Landry, because
Yes.
they still want, in theory anyway.
Hmm.
That's still who Pete Carmichael is, and
Yeah.
Carmichael was Peyton's offensive coordinator every single year he was in New Orleans.
Yeah.
They didn't get Jarvis Landry to run deep. Marquez Callaway isn't still on the roster to run deep. Marquez Callaway is a poor man's Jarvis Landry.
Hmm.
So like you said, this team is still built for exactly that.
And it's like you're trying to make an octagon piece fit in a round hole. It looks like it'll fit, but it really doesn't fit. And that's why I said it earlier in the show. You need to sit him down because I don't feel he is listening. Um, you know, is Carmichael play calling probably predictable? Yeah, arguable,
Yeah.
but let's see you execute Carmichael's offense a little bit better because Carmichael
Mhm.
is trying to run a certain kind of offense, and there is a deep guy on all those plays. But when you got guys running wide open and you're not throwing them the ball, that's not on Carmichael. To
Yeah.
me, that's on you. You got to make that throw. You got to
Yep.
throw to the guy that's open and not the guy that you want to throw to. And you decided when you heard the play come in through your headset that this is who I'm going to go to no matter what the defense does. This is who I'm going to go to because I want to make that play. And I feel like that's what's going on there. So it is. And yeah, Jimmy Gumbo, I saw that. Yeah, a lot of offenses have been struggling. Well, the Packers Bucks game, that was almost like a replay of the Saints Bucks game, except the Packers didn't melt down at the end.
Right.
Um, the Packers, their limitations show, but still, you held Tom Brady to 3 points for most of the game. Um, and that Broncos 49ers game, my God. God. And, it's interesting you mentioned Chiefs. The Chiefs, who were they playing? Were they playing the Titans? Who were the Chiefs?
Indy. Indy.
Indy. That's who it was. They gave Indy their first win. Um, one of the guys the Saints interviewed for a long time that people wanted to be the head coach, Eric Bieniemy, and they
Hmm.
had a sideline confrontation between
Hmm.
Bieniemy and Mahomes about the play calling right before halftime. Mahomes wanted to get in a position to kick a field goal, and Bieniemy didn't want anything to do with that. He was satisfied with the lead they had, and they got into an argument about that. And I saw Shady McCoy, who had played for the Chiefs, came out and blasted Bieniemy, basically saying he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. So I found that, and take it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
You know, I just found that interesting to hear. Where people are sitting there going, "Oh, Dennis Allen's probably a bad hire," or Carmichael's calling the bad plays. But it all depends. Any given Sunday, you're going to see other guys getting blasted. I mean, the Saints didn't the Saints interview their special teams coach too
Yes.
for the head coaching job?
Yes.
Yeah,
And they also interviewed what's the guy's name in Jacksonville now? Peterson.
yeah.
They interviewed mostly offensive guys,
Hmm.
except for the special teams coach and Dennis Allen, who they ultimately went with.
Yeah.
But yeah, you look at all the offenses that struggled this past Sunday, and really have been struggling all year. With the exception of the Bills.
Ken
Yeah,
Dorsey in the Bills.
right.
I think he
You
was every Saints fan watching that game.
yeah. Yeah, but with the Broncos, you have Russell Wilson. You have a former offensive coordinator as your head coach, and Nathaniel Hackett.
Yes.
You have the almighty Bieniemy and an offensive guy in Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. You have Josh Mahomes and a former quarterback in Ken Dorsey in Buffalo. You have the almighty Tom Brady and a very good guy coach in Byron Leftwich in Tampa Bay. So I do take umbrage to all the Dennis Allen haters that are saying, oh, this is what you get when you get a defensive head coach, defensive coordinator as your head. No, that's not true. Again, the axe will ultimately fall on Dennis Allen because he is the head coach. But Pete Carmichael is in charge of the offense. There's zero question about that. And I've said it myself, and I agree with what you said. The players still have to execute the plays that are being called in, but these coaches, whether it's getting in these players' faces, confronting them during game day, or in the meeting rooms where nobody sees, so the ESPN cameras aren't turned on for those ones. Or just you know what? You don't have to yell and scream, but Jameis Winston, if you're not going to listen to the play call, how about you have a seat for a couple of weeks, and you see Andy Dalton run the offense that I want to run, and let's see how effective this is. And if you learn from that, then you'll go back in. It's moves like that too that could also shake up. Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport. You're not getting to the passer. I'm going to cut your snaps down. I'm going to give them to a Carl Granderson or to no Passanio. And if they get to the quarterback and they accomplish what we want to accomplish, then maybe that'll light a fire under your ass. So you don't have to yell and scream to get your point across. But the coaches are under should be under as much fire and under the gun just as much as the players are this Sunday against Minnesota.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. And when I was saying that, you can't criticize Carmichael for some of the execution. You can criticize Carmichael for not feeling like the team's not prepared. You definitely can criticize Allen for not getting this team motivating this team to be up for this opponent. If they look flat, that does fall on the coach, so the coach has a role. But and also if you have undisciplined mistakes, I'm waiting for that I've seen enough moment from Allen, because I think that's what the players are waiting for. I think they're waiting for, okay, this is when it's serious. This is when he's not just a figurehead or a guy passing through. He's actually the head coach, and he's going to put his stamp on this team. I mean, when Sean Payton came in, what were the things that he said? He said, Parcells told him, you got to find out why this team is losing, and you got to fix that. Otherwise, in 3 years, you're going to be watching a press conference with somebody being introduced taking your job.
Right.
And what did he do? He walked in. He found that what was his name now? The right tackle, Wayne Gandy, had a big old easy lazy boy chair by his locker room, and he says, "Whose is this?" And they told him it was Gandy. He says, "Go throw that. Not just throw it out of the locker room. Go put it in the dumpster."
Yeah.
I mean, that is a hell of a statement to make. Just throw it in a dumpster. Somebody else's friggin' chair. And it was a message. He was sending a message. This shit ain't going to be tolerated. There is no second class. You're a veteran and you're an older veteran, so you get this special treatment. And the other players, they don't get that kind of stuff. No, throw that shit out of here. He threw out all the games and stuff that Hazlitt put in there to build camaraderie. Sounds like Ralph Marlboro. I can't pronounce anything. But all the games, they said, no, this locker room this is business.
Yep.
Do that shit in the other room, and he built a stronger locker room out of that. He came in and made a statement, and these are the guys I'm counting on. These are the guys that are going to be my voices on the team. And I think he's having that problem getting those guys to listen to him because they've heard Sean Payton for so long. So that this is a huge challenge for him to kind of break that. And I think he can do that, number one, by properly handling this quarterback issue, and I think he can justify benching him by saying, you know what, you're not healthy, you're hurting the team. I'm sitting you down for a couple of weeks, and then we're going to revisit this, and go ahead and put Dalton in there. And even if Dalton isn't solving the problem, even if Dalton is, an extension of that, he can turn his attention to, you know what, Ruiz or Pete or Hurst or whomever it is, you're not cutting it either. I've seen enough.
Mm-hmm.
Time for you to move, and that'll get these players' attention.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to do what it takes to win, and if you guys aren't going to do it, I'll find somebody who will, and I'll get rid of you. And I think that's the kind of moment he needs right now. Yeah, cut the kumbaya stuff and get to work. You're right. I
Yeah,
mean,
you are right, Calvin.
I think that's how this team responds because right now he's seen as that's still Coach Allen. That's he's defensive coordinator. He's not the head coach. Yeah, we know he's the head man, but they're not viewing him as the head man. It's
Mm-hmm.
a different relationship. Parcells even had that issue. You watch a football like with Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells, he was defensive coordinator for the Giants. He left
Yeah.
briefly because he couldn't handle it, but he came back as a head coach. And Phil Simms says it, yeah, Parcells was named the head coach in '83, but '84 is the year we saw the real Bill Parcells because '84 they were this close to making a change. '84, '85, around that time they were going to make a change. And Parcells says, if I'm going down, I'm going down the way I think I should coach.
Right.
And that's what we need out of this. That's the kind of thing Allen needs to do to separate himself from the guy who failed at the Raiders and the guy who was Sean Payton's defensive coordinator. He needs to
Mm-hmm.
create his own identity, and that's what he needs to do.
Yep. And yeah, the players, if this is their guy, and this is the guy that they want on the sidelines, they've got to come together and play for him too. Yeah, they've got to, and yeah, you used a great example with Parcells. Parcells was incredibly close to losing his job.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they were interviewing candidates backdoor. You could do that back then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but because things didn't get leaked as readily as they do now, as easily as they do now. But Parcells found out that they were interviewing people. As a matter of fact, I think I read or heard somewhere that it was a friend of Parcells actually called him and said, a friend in the coaching fraternity, and said the Giants just interviewed me, or either interviewed me or want to interview me for your job. I just thought you should know. And by the way, what kind of organization are they to work for? And it's about that time that Parcells made that change. But it was also in talking to Phil Simms and Lawrence Taylor and the guys who eventually became the Parcells guys. And we know, you know who that is, because that type of player, because Sean Payton had Sean Payton guys. It was then that they all got together and they decided collectively, if we're going to save our coach's ass and probably our own jobs, we got to get our own asses in gear. So it's time for this locker room leadership to do the same thing that Dennis Allen needs to do. Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael need to do. They need to hold themselves accountable and hold the players around them accountable. The leadership on the field has to do that just as much as the leadership on the sidelines.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a critical must-win game because you end up 1-3 coming home in Seattle to play Seattle in the Dome. And this team plays the way they played against the Panthers and plays flat against the Vikings. People my age and older, or maybe people from the end of the Maury years, are the only ones who are going to be in the Bum Phillips years are the only ones who are going to remember what it's like to be in that dome when the fans are pissed and want a player gone
Yeah.
or a coach fired. The Ditka years, it was so apathetic, and same with the end of the Hazlitt years because you had Katrina and all that going on.
Right.
The fans were so apathetic, you never got that feeling. But with Mora, they were sick of Mora by '96. And they were sick of a lot of the players that were on that team. And Bum Phillips, I mean, he'll tell you that his last year, the opening week, they got their ass handed to him in '85. Got their ass handed to them by the Kansas City Chiefs. And a woman, as they're walking back to the tunnel, a woman stands in the load section, takes a full beer, and dumps it on Bum Phillips as he's walking out. And he said that was one of the things that, you know, he cited as that's when he decided it's time for me to go because somebody's willing to do that to me. That's what they think of me. Um, yeah, I mean, the anger of a guy coming out on the field. You saw a little bit of it with Aaron Brooks, but not to that level that you would see if Jameis Winston comes out of that side, on the sideline to start, and the crowd just starts booing him, and they boo him when they walk off the field, and the paper airplanes come, and all that stuff. That
Yep.
that was what it was like when I was a kid. I mean, they booed Archie's commercial. Archie Manning comes on for Royal Oldsmobile, and there's a timeout on the big screens that used to hang from the gondola, and the fans are booing the commercial, because it's Archie, and that's how pissed they were. I mean, it's just, I was there. That those games I was there. I'm sorry, I have to say that I was there for the 1980 season. So I mean,
But yeah, you're right. I mean, starting 1-3 by losing to the Vikings, and it's not just a regular old 1-3. These are 3 conference losses, 2 of those in your division. Yeah, that's a big enough hole. But I think you're right. I think the fanship, the fanship in large part will turn on this team and on specific players. Jameis Winston '1, Dennis Allen '2, on specific players and coaches very, very quickly. And it has 1-3 is certainly you're capable of coming back from. But again, three big conference losses is a major torpedo shot to your playoff hopes, if you have any. And then a season on the precipice of completely unraveling into a paper bag kind of things. I don't think we'll ever see that kind of thing in New Orleans again en masse. But we're talking that kind of discontentment.
Yeah, I mean, crowd chanting because of Johnny Poe. Poe must go. I mean, just that kind of booing Richard Todd. I mean, I saw it. It's a miserable experience. Angry people at a game, and just getting angrier the more things go wrong. So yeah, this is a critical moment. That's why I said it's like training camp. They need to refocus, start the season like a reset, start the season over again, and come out with a win. Bob, you got Bayou Blitz tomorrow night. Do you have anybody lined up? What y'all going to do? Are you going to be doing the same thing, the post-mortem on the Carolina game?
I think we're going to do post-mortem. I have tried like hell to get Irv Smith. I'll send him a message. He'll send me a message back telling me to call him. I'll call him. I'll leave a voicemail. He'll text me back. Sorry, I missed your call. I'll call you back in a bit. He doesn't. I message. It's been, and we tried to get Irv before, and that's what happened too. So Irv, if you're watching, call me.
I noticed the black helmet in the background. I'm sorry. Did you know they're wearing the black helmet Sunday?
Yeah, I did. That's why I kind of, I kind of had that up before, but the superstitious part of me, I wanted to kind of revamp a little bit what's going on behind me, because I don't want to be one of those angry. Okay, I am one of those angry fans, but I don't want to be one of those angry fans that start to demolish all this shit behind me, because I earn that stuff. My kids earn that stuff.
My my autograph. I don't know if you can read it or not. Ricky Jackson, Hall of Fame 2010. There's an autographed helmet from Ricky Jackson.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I got a few others in here. Over in my little bookcase down here, I've got some autographed footballs and stuff like that. So yeah, the black helmets. So that's going to be interesting to see that. First time they've ever worn black helmets in a regular season game.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to say, "Oh, but in 1969, I've seen the pictures of those helmets. That was preseason only."
Preseason. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had to get rid of them because they did not get official league approval prior to that. So the Saints, and this is old way football used to be played. They went to they used to have a semi-pro team, and that's who ended up with the helmets, was a semi-pro Saints football team that they kind of, I guess, be equivalent of a D League, maybe in the NBA. They would get players out of that. That's where Coach J.D. Roberts actually came from
Yeah.
not the Saints semi-pro team, but from a semi-pro team that was playing in that league, the Richmond Roadrunners. So, yeah, different era back then. But anyway, the show wasn't too bad. I don't think we ripped too many people. You kind of, it's tough not to be overly negative,
Mm-hmm.
but you gotta face facts. I mean, they're playing. They're not a bad team, but they're playing like a very bad team, and
Yeah.
they're capable of much more. And I think that's why people are so frustrated. So 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, Sunday morning. Sorry, 8 o'clock Sunday morning. So yeah, don't be like me. I overslept and I missed the first half of the Dolphins game when they played 5 years. It's 2017, so 5 years ago.
5 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. I caught all the San Diego Saints game back in, what was it, 2012 or whatever year they played. No, it was 2008.
2008. Yeah.
Yeah. I caught all that game, but yeah, some of the other ones I didn't catch the whole thing because I forget it's at 8 o'clock in the morning. Um, oh, and last thing, I meant to start the show with this because we talked about it off air.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, if you can make it, I mean, I can't, but Saturday at, make sure I say this company's name right, let's see. I'm sorry. I want to, Two Dudes Brew and Q is the fundraiser for Sean. Sean did lose everything in this fire. He's still in ICU. He was supposed to have surgery Monday. I have not seen any update on this, but it was a skin graft Monday. It was his first surgery. And sadly, I think I mentioned this, he had to get his thumb and all of his fingers amputated from his left hand. So for a guy who loves to play music, that's really, really tough. Um, but a band named RK is going to be doing an all-day concert fundraising event for Sean Williams Saturday, October 1st at Two Dudes Brew and Q. And unfortunately, this is also going to be the last day that Two Dudes Brew and Q is open up there in good God, come on, you know where in Monroe, Louisiana. I always want to say Shreveport. I know it's not Shreveport. I know that, but it's Monroe. Yeah, Kevo has to close the place because, yes, thank you. Because between COVID and everything else, his business is in trouble. So this is the last thing they're doing for Sean. Big benefit. All the proceeds are going to pay to try and help Sean out as best we can. We still don't even know, what kind of quality of life he's going to have. Because I know it was back and his backside and his left arm that was burned. But as soon as I hear something from Sean, or hear anything else from Sean, I will share it on the Under the Dome podcast Facebook page, on Bayou Blitz
Mhm.
podcast Facebook page. I try and share everything I'm finding out about him. So I'll
Yes, thank you.
keep you guys in the loop. In the meantime, thank you guys so much. Yeah, that's going to be a whole nother show. We'll talk about that another time, but that's a whole nother show. Um, but yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.